and sustainable sector. So bring your questions for this panel session now as they provide an innovation update.
Who's Director of Global Education Partnerships. And we're here to talk about looking towards the future. Grounding all of our presentation is the strategic recovery plan from the New Zealand government around international education, and particularly about transforming to a more sustainable future state. The essence of this is how can we get a better ability and better channels and offerings and products to give access to our learners and our partners to New Zealand education, no matter where they are in the world. Because if one thing was really shown through the COVID experience was that New Zealand was quite exposed with a heavy reliance on students having to come to New Zealand to get that New Zealand education experience. And so there is a range of products and services activity. One is around exploring new services and products that might be more relevant to people who may choose to stay at home or only have a part experience here in New Zealand, and also about how we can actually access learners and for our partners online. And then, of course, some offshore pathway initiatives, which John will talk about more later.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you here today. We just wanted to take this moment to underline the New Zealand philosophy and tikanga Māori worldview in terms of how we take an approach to partnership in creating and delivering innovative education solutions for students. So here you can see a diagram that reflects tukutuku or reciprocity, as well as hoko hoko or trade and exchange. And this diagram really just emphasizes that for us to succeed globally, we need to partner well in terms of connecting with others on what we have to offer, what we want to deliver to students globally, and then establishing those connections to support those ambitions and that delivery. And really this is a theme throughout all of our Partner Week this week, is just reinforcing our commitment to you as our partners in delivering a great New Zealand education experience globally. And it's embedded the approach that we've taken to innovating to deliver education solutions globally for students. Sector success, our students will have a great life experience and great New Zealand education. I'll now pass back to Ewan to talk a little bit more about some specific products and services that we've been developing using this approach.
Thanks, John. So as we were mentioning earlier, New Zealand was shown to have quite a high risk profile when there was a major world disruption or a black swan event such as COVID. And so we have to really be exploring other ways that we can access learners and be relevant and helpful for our partners. And whilst digital and platforms and websites have been around for a long time, there's quite an opportunity in front of us to match what we can offer as an experience in the education online space to what our learners and increasingly our partners are asking from us. We're using mission-led initiative innovation principles. And those are things around making sure that we're trying to think long-term around some key objectives. So we're not changing with the latest flavor each time that a new piece of technology comes through. And a really big one for us now is, and has always been, that conceptual alignment with wider government. Because it's not just us, of course, in the international education space, trade and enterprise, foreign affairs, the MPI and other government agencies, tourism of course, are all thinking about how to do this and how to be relevant to learners and other customers when you can't physically travel to New Zealand. So if we can scale that focus, then we're going to have better impact. So one of the pilots that we've been doing, which we're going to be building out in the next year or so, is our evolution of study in New Zealand, which is our destination marketing front shop window to study with New Zealand. And that's to diversify away from just attracting students and telling learners about what the life experience is in New Zealand, to be able to show our portfolio marketing, which is including online offerings from New Zealand's existing providers, as well as emerging new products as we test them, and of course our pathway offering. So these are all now live, existing on the SINS Study in New Zealand website, and we're going live in late June with the first tranche of the Study with New Zealand to support a global brand campaign, which is coming out Q1, Q2, which is approximately late September, October. So what that means for our partners is that we'll be doing some heavy marketing for brand New Zealand in the education space around late September, October, and that will go through likely until sort of November, December. Its main job is to be driving the preference awareness for New Zealand education and how it's more than just study in. There are options for you at your home, and there are products that we will be able to promote for learners that are actually wanting to study in their home destinations before choosing to come to New Zealand. We also have several prototypes in train, and one's going live, or will be live by the time we have this conference. And it's about testing if there is an online learner demand for a New Zealand offering, New Zealand industry's willingness and capability for putting online first offerings into the global sphere. So we've partnered with a company called FutureLearn. They're a global online learning platform specializing in sort of micro-credential type learning experiences. We've got a theme of sustainability because we do want a bit of focus with this online offering, because one of the critical challenges we have is how can we stand out? You know, how can we actually have an offering that learners will want to choose New Zealand, as opposed to, well, we could just get that same thing from a Harvard or a Oxford or some other competitor. But we've got some credible strengths in the sustainability space. And this pilot has 23 courses out of the box. And we've had our provider, our partner FutureLearn, help with some of our industry providers for a bit of capability building, because some of them had great content, but just wasn't quite wrapped into FutureLearn fit for purpose. So we're expecting to get some good learnings out of this, and then this will feed into new product development. So I'll hand over to John now to talk about global pathways.
Thanks very much, Ewan. And as Ewan mentioned, we're really focused on expanding how and where students can access a New Zealand education experience or begin their New Zealand education journey. So Global Pathways really refers to those initiatives that help students to undertake a campus-based learning experience from their home country with the aim of progressing onwards to further study with a New Zealand education institution. And the good news is that we've already got a whole range of options available right now for students to begin their New Zealand study journey. So if we just go through to the next slide, we'll be able to see our Study in New Zealand website. As it sits right now, you can go through to the Study Options tab and click on Global Pathways and see the range of education options that are available to students in your country right at this second. And we have many options that are available. So in this next slide, we show the variety of education products that we have. We have exactly 981 education study options, which are available in more than 180 study locations across more than 30 countries. So we're confident that no matter where or what the student is looking to achieve, we'll have some education study options available for them. The bulk of those study options are pathway qualifications. So that means that once they have achieved that qualification through a recognised education institution in their home country, they will meet the requirements to enter directly into an undergraduate or postgraduate degree program with a New Zealand university. We also have articulation options whereby the learning that the student undertakes with that institution in their home country is recognised and credited towards the achievement of a New Zealand undergraduate or postgraduate qualification, mostly undergraduate degree qualifications. We have joint awards where the student will be able to achieve a qualification from both the partner institution and the New Zealand institution, usually through study undertaken in both countries. And then we have a relatively small number of New Zealand qualifications that are delivered in full within the student's home country. And we're expecting the number of those offerings to increase over the coming months. So as you can see, quite a wide range of study journeys that we're catering for. At this stage, these listings are available for progression onto our university sector, but we're actively exploring how we can expand this offering for students that may be looking to progress towards another part of our New Zealand education sector beyond the study they undertake in their home country. So that's a little bit of what we have on offer right now. In terms of where we're looking to go through to in the future, really our vision and the vision which has been supported by the Education New Zealand Board and by the New Zealand Government through the recovery strategy is to establish New Zealand education centres globally, which will provide an authentic New Zealand education experience internationally. Now, what does that mean? It means that students will be studying education programs that are designed specifically to progress them onwards to further study with a New Zealand education institution. There will be lectures and or research delivered by New Zealand institutions through the centre. The curriculum or the qualifications that students will be studying will have a New Zealand curriculum or curriculum components within them, and that we will be providing an authentic and excellent New Zealand and tikanga Māori experience to support those students to succeed. And we also envisage that these centres will play a role for broader New Zealand outreach into the local communities within which they're based. So we're quite excited about this initiative. And if we just go through to the next slide, you can see a little bit about what we're trying to achieve through the initiative. So really three main things: greater recognition of New Zealand's quality education system and through the physical presence and reputation of the centres, greater numbers of students progressing onwards to further study in or with New Zealand education providers. And as I mentioned, we see these as part of a broader connection between New Zealand and our counterpart countries in which these centres are based. And where we sit right now is that we've just closed proposals for the first tranche of centres. So we're working with our education institutions to refine the list of centre locations that we'll be looking to establish in 2022 to take initial student intakes. But if you or an institution that you know could be interested in hosting a New Zealand education centre, we'd love to hear from you, so that can help inform how we expand and scale this initiative over the coming years. So please do reach out if you think your institution or a partner may be a good fit to host a New Zealand education centre. So now just wrapping up our conversation for today, just a message to all of our partners listed. Education, regardless of the COVID-19 global travel situation. And so we recognise that students want to get started, want to progress their global education journey. And so these initiatives are really about reflecting that, around meeting that need. But importantly, we also believe that these sorts of education options and these sorts of study journeys are here to stay and will be an increasingly important part of the global education system, and for us will increasingly complement the excellent student experience that we offer within New Zealand. So a final message to our partners as we progress these sort of initiatives: education solutions in your country it's promoting, supporting or counselling students to access these study options. And we know our education institutions are thinking very hard and finding creative ways to incentivise partners to connect students to these sorts of study options. So if you do think you have students that may be interested, please get in touch with the education institution who is offering those education study options. Or more broadly, if you have ideas or platform solutions our education sector, please get in touch with Ewan and I, and we'd love to have those conversations and see what sort of exciting we can provide they might want to start their New Zealand education journey. Thanks very much for spending some time with us today. We'd now love to hear any questions that you may have, so we can discuss those in the remaining time we have in this session. Kia ora.
Kia ora, John and Ewan. Thank you both for that insightful session on how New Zealand's looking to the future and creating a more sustainable sector through a diversification of international education products and services. It's fantastic to see that international partnerships will also be integral to the success of this work. We do have a few questions as I scroll through, coming through now, so we'll try to answer as many of those as we are able to. I think beginning with and I'll open this to you both, through your presentation, it appears New Zealand education providers are showing a greater interest in collaborating with international partners. Is that right?
Thank you, Ben. I'm sure we'll both have the same answer to that, and that's absolutely. I think partly this is an extension of existing strategies that our institutions have been progressing even pre-COVID in terms of making sure there's more resilience in their international education offerings and that they can reach students in a greater range of ways and through a greater range of platforms. But COVID-19, I think for everyone, has just really reinforced how important it is to be forging these international partnerships. So yes, it's a 100% unqualified yes for that question.
Thanks, John. I'll take Ewan's nod as an agreement to that. There's a question here, Ewan, on the Future Learn project. If you can clarify, please, is this a cross collaboration between New Zealand and the UK?
No, kia ora, everyone. No. So I know I acknowledge that Future Learn was originally a UK-based platform, but we are partnering with the platform and not the country. So we're partnering with Future Learn as a platform to enable us to test online learning. Thanks.
Thanks, Ewan. Well, I'll wrap this up into one question, also related to Future Learn. Where can our attendees learn more about Future Learn programs, and how much does it cost to sign up to a New Zealand study program on Future Learn?
Thanks, Ben. So in the first part of the question, so there are two places you can find out more information. One is on the studyinNewzealand.govt website, which we will put into the Q&A link. And the other one is if you just Google or search for Future Learn and New Zealand, and you'll land on the Future Learn sort of landing destination for New Zealand, and you can have a look around. The second part, for learners, these are free taster courses. So this is only a pilot, so it's only a short-term pilot, and for learners it's a free pilot, but if it's successful we'll be looking at alternative and more long-term financial models.
Great, thank you, Ewan. One question here for you, John. It's fantastic to see such development in the pathway programs. Are you able to provide an overview of the benefits gained through studying these pathway programs?
Yes, certainly. We'd probably categorise the benefits into three main areas. So first of all is flexibility. Students can get started on their education journey right now by beginning courses regardless of the global COVID-19 travel situation. And they'll also have flexibility in terms of when they choose to head abroad to New Zealand. So that's quite an important one at the moment. Secondly, we'd emphasise accessibility. So because we're partnering with more than 180 providers, study sites around the world, it means that students can access that education experience much closer to home, which means that they will save on costs, particularly travel, accommodation and the likes, and they'll also have that accessibility within their home country or their home city. And finally, we've just emphasised the choice that students have. So through the listings that are available right now on our Study in New Zealand website, students can access, as was mentioned in the presentation, 981 different study options. So no matter what sort of program, what sort of subject they're seeking to progress towards, they will have an option that suits them on the website. So those are the three main things that we're emphasising in supporting these sorts of programs, are the flexibility, accessibility and choice that they provide to students.
Thanks, John. Related to that question, there's another one more around the financial implications and cost. Would, in your opinion, taking up dual or joint degree programs or pathway programs help us save costs?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a few elements to that. Obviously, if you're able to study from home or even study locally, chances are that you'll be saving on accommodation and living costs, and also in terms of the duration of time that you'll be spending in another country and the academic fees in that country, you'll be saving probably on the academic costs as well in some respects. I think the other point, in addition to costs, is that these sorts of programs enable students to make a more informed decision about where they choose to study abroad or where they choose to progress to, because they can undertake a portion of that study at home, make sure that it's right for them and that they're really enjoying that education experience, and then they can make the investment in their global education experience more confidently because they've already had the education and learning experience, and they've shown to the institutions that they can achieve the grades and do the work required. So I think for all parties, these sorts of programs are going to play a bigger role going forward in supporting students' global education aspirations wherever they might be beginning from.
Thanks, John. Another one here, and this is potentially looking longer term as well, is reference to some of New Zealand competitor countries establishing foreign campuses across some of our partner countries in Asia, examples in Indonesia and in Malaysia. Is that something that ENZ is looking towards perhaps in the future?
Yes, absolutely. So the New Zealand education centres are essentially doing a similar thing in terms of taking a New Zealand education experience to people's home countries. But there are probably two important distinctions I'd make between the branch campus model that was mentioned and what we're proposing or implementing through New Zealand education centres. One is that New Zealand education centres bring together a range of New Zealand universities or other institutions so that students aren't just studying towards one destination institution. They've got the option of studying at any one of our New Zealand universities or indeed other institutions over time. So we're bringing a lot more choice to students through the New Zealand education centres. And secondly, we're also partnering with prestigious local institutions. So that enables students to have the best of both worlds in many respects. They'll have the familiarity of their local institution and be supported in that local learning environment with a New Zealand education experience being brought to that campus. So I think those are two important distinctions that we would make in terms of our efforts in providing those education experiences around the world.
John, one here for you, Ewan, through the Q&A box again. How do you, or how do we, keep the offerings competitive given that there are so many online learning platforms out there?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we're actively iterating on. What we've got in front of us for the next year is to align, like we mentioned in the presentation, where we can scale our focus along with our wider government. So we're really trying to scale for impact. We've also stand on and are doing some further research to identify where are those areas in the world that we can credibly be seen as somewhere that's a destination that has a contribution to play in those world areas. And then around that, we'll be doing our course offering development. And so the first cab off the rank is sustainability. And that's what we're testing in the Future Learn pilot, we're sitting on some pretty good research showing that we are credible in that space and some niches of it. And that's our strategy, is identify those niche areas on the world stage that we can credibly be seen to have a position of strength in, and then develop further product to meet that need.
Great, thank you, Ewan. Another question here, which was touched on during the presentation, the change from study in to study with the New Zealand tagline. I think that probably provides a nice tagline to everything you've discussed, but is there anything else you'd like to highlight here around what that means and what it might potentially mean for our international partners across the region?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm sure John has some thoughts on this one as well, but some comments I'd like to make there. You know, it's not just a COVID response situation. There's been long-term trends around how people consume education, where they consume it, and at what stage of their life journey. You know, it's not just 18 to 20 or 24-year-olds, clearly. And so studying with infers that we can be relevant and have an offering that will be useful and relevant for learners along that life journey, you know, of a sort of continuous learning. And so that's what the underpinning strategy is about study with. Of course, there's the physical elements of it, online, the study centres and pathways in New Zealand, but it's also about being relevant through life stage.
Thanks, Ewan. John, would you like to add anything to that comment from you?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate Ewan's points, that these are expanding the ways and means through which students all over the world can access the benefits of a New Zealand education experience. And so, you know, we see this as where education globally is going, and we want to help lead that journey for the betterment of students everywhere. So there will always be a very strong role for studying in New Zealand and the benefits that provides to students. But we see providing all of these range of experiences in terms of the study with concept as really helping to strengthen and reinforce New Zealand's overall education offering.
Great. There was a question here around exchange and reciprocity. Obviously, moving away from potentially a focus on inbound student mobility to partnerships is in itself is centered around reciprocity. Are you able to highlight any key initiatives that are playing directly in this space around that mutual collaboration, mutual benefit between New Zealand and its partner countries?
Yes, happy to kick off on that one, Ben, and just to re-emphasise the points that we made in the presentation is that these concepts of tukutuku and hoko hoko in terms of reciprocity and trade and exchange aren't limited to education. This is a worldview that New Zealand has, that our Indigenous Māori culture has as well, and New Zealand has very much been founded on being good hosts and good friends to the world. So whether that's tourism being our largest industry, education, you know, over the years, welcoming more than 100,000 students in New Zealand, we have all been about seeing where we can add value to our partners and being good friends to those. So that is something that we're progressing through all of these initiatives, and I think we've been really excited by the level of interest we've had from potential partners, because they can see how these sorts of initiatives also benefit and strengthen their education systems and the experiences that they can offer to students within their countries, and by connecting students from New Zealand with students from their country as well. So we're excited about just the range of innovative solutions and ideas that are coming through these initiatives.
Thanks, John. And Ewan, with the Future Learn, it's obviously been well received in country with the early sign-up numbers. I think that clearly demonstrates that the products around sustainability and other relevant programs are matching the consumer demand in country. So you must be pretty happy with the initial reception.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, so in the first week we've had over 4,000 course completions, and the media spend and promotion activities only just spooling up. But absolutely, we're really happy with the initial performance. Also, equally because this is a pilot to help carry some de-risk for our partners and providers here in New Zealand to get online and test this. And so we're really pleased that so far it's working well.
Great. well, I'm sure things will get only bigger and better. So thank you both for your time. Kia ora, John, kia ora, Ewan, and thanks to all of our attendees once again for joining us.